My husband said, "I sold your little cabin for $60,000. His family cheered, calling it a smart move. He looked at me and added, "The money for this dinner? It's from the cabin sale. At least one meal is covered." I stayed quiet. Then the buyer's lawyer called, screaming, "Why are the authorities at our office?" Something didn't feel right. The Whitmore family dinner was in full swing when Owen stood, tapping his fork against Margaret's best crystal. "Before we eat, I have something important to share," he said, his voice carrying authority he rarely showed. "You all know about Violet's little cabin, her impractical purchase 3 years ago." My shoulders tensed at his tone. Well, I finally did something about it. I sold it for $60,000 last month while she was overseas. The words hung in the air as he pointed to the elaborate spread. "The money for this dinner. It's from the cabin sale. At least one meal is covered." His family laughed and applauded, but I stayed silent, my phone vibrating with the call that would change everything. "Why are the authorities at our office?" The buyer's lawyer would scream moments later, confirming what I already suspected. "Before we continue, I want to thank you for being here. If you believe every woman's achievements deserve recognition, not dismissal, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps these stories reach others." Now, let me explain how I ended up at this table, surrounded by people who made dismissing me an art form. 6 years of marriage to Owen Whitmore had taught me the precise boundaries of my invisibility. That morning, like every morning, I rose at dawn to prepare his coffee. 2 sugars, no cream. While he scrolled through his phone, my greeting went unacknowledged. Breakfast was eaten in silence, broken only by chewing and the ping of his fantasy football group. Margaret called while I was cleaning up, speaking. Gee, only to Owen about Sunday's menu, though I would spend 6 hours cooking her complicated requests. "Make sure Violet knows about the roast," she said, as if I were hired help, "and tell her not to oversalt the potatoes like last time." The potatoes had been perfectly seasoned, but in the Whitmore family my efforts were always lacking. The pattern was set early. When I received my promotion, 30% raise and a corner office after 18 months of 70-hour weeks, Owen's response was a distracted mumble about finally contributing to our finances. The next night, his brother Mason scratched off a $50 lottery ticket, and the family erupted in celebration. Margaret took photos. Richard toasted Mason's financial acumen. Their small cruelties piled up like sediment. Margaret often forgot to set a place for me at holiday dinners until Owen mentioned it. Richard discussed finances with Owen while I sat there, invisible, though I'd out-earned him for 2 years. Mason borrowed money he never repaid, joking that I tracked every penny, which I did, but not for the reasons he assumed. At family dinners, my accomplishments were footnotes, while Owen's mediocre sales numbers were praised as if he'd revolutionized his industry. The month I landed a $1 million contract, dinner conversations centered on Owen closing a deal worth less than my monthly commission. When I mentioned my achievement, Margaret said, "That's nice, dear," before immediately asking Owen about his next quarter. I started my rebellion. 3 years ago, I opened a savings account Owen knew nothing about. Every freelance project, every skipped lunch, every coffee I didn't buy went into that account. Slowly the balance grew, each deposit a quiet defiance against their belief that everything I earned belonged to Owen. The cabin was my first major purchase. 2 acres of pine forest, 40 miles from suburbia, with a creaky deck overlooking a pond. When Owen discovered it through a credit report for a car loan, his rage filled our house for weeks. Margaret and Richard arrived within hours, lecturing me about marriage being built on transparency and trust. What kind of wife keeps secrets? Margaret demanded, while Richard questioned my mental stability, but the cabin became my sanctuary. Every Friday, I drove north with coffee and notebooks, spending weekends in peaceful silence. Owen refused to visit, calling it my midlife crisis shack. His family spun a narrative where the cabin symbolized everything wrong with our marriage, my selfishness, impracticality, and failure as a wife. 4 months ago, my firm won a major defense contract requiring someone with high-level clearance to coordinate offices across Asia. I was chosen over 12 candidates for my expertise in compliance. Owen's first response wasn't pride but suspicion. Why would they send a woman alone overseas? He asked, while Margaret accused me of abandoning my duties. Before leaving, I arranged everything. The cabin was registered with federal databases due to my clearance, transforming it into a protected asset. I left Owen detailed emergency-only instructions, automated payments, and hired property managers. His dismissive laugh still echoed in my memory. Now, sitting at the dinner table, watching him bask in his family's praise for selling my cabin, my sanctuary, my achievement, my freedom, my phone vibrated again. Harrison Blackwell, the caller ID read. I didn't know him, but somehow I knew this call would explain why Owen's announcement was about to become the worst decision of his life. I excused myself, stepping onto the Whitmore's back porch. Harrison's voice trembled as he described federal agents combing through documents, questioning property sales that required clearance. Through the glass doors, Owen proudly displayed his brilliant transaction while Margaret poured more wine. 3 years earlier, it had begun with a different phone call. Ruth Morrison, the elderly owner, had a voice like warm honey. It's not fancy, she warned. My husband built most of it himself. But there's something special about those woods. They know how to keep secrets that I drove out under the excuse of a dental appointment. The dirt road wound through pines that filtered October light into golden patches. When the trees opened, I felt something in my chest uncloaking for the first time in years. Weathered cedar siding, a greened metal roof, a tilted but sturdy deck over a glassy pond. Ruth waited on the steps, white hair pinned back, flannel shirt likely her late husband's. She guided me through each room, hands lingering on doorframes like farewells. At the east-facing window, she whispered, Harold said the sunrise through these pines was better than church. I think he was right. Her price was $20,000 under market. I don't need the money, she said. I need to know it's going to someone who needs this place like Harold, and I did. Someone who knows 4 walls and silence can be medicine. The down payment was 3 years of skipped lunches, declined dinners, worn-out clothes. Each dollar saved a rebellion against the Whitmore's belief that I belonged to Owen. My hands shook as I signed Violet Chin, my maiden name. The keys felt heavier than metal, weighted with possibility. For 2 weeks, I kept the secret, driving up alone, fixing cabinet doors and leaky faucets with YouTube tutorials. Each repair reclaimed a piece of me the Whitmores had erased. Owen discovered it by accident. Refinancing his BMW, the loan officer's screen showed Pine Grove Mortgage Company. Confusion turned to rage in 3 seconds. The drive home was silent. The explosion waited until inside. You bought property, without telling me. With what money? His voice climbed with each question. Within an hour, Margaret's Lexus and Richard's Mercedes were in our driveway. They lined up in our living room like a tribunal. Violet, darling, Margaret began, pearls gleaming. What kind of wife makes major financial decisions without her husband? Richard added, hidden money, secret purchases. These are not the actions of a stable person. Calmly, I said, the cabin cost $45,000. I paid with freelance work. Our joint finances weren't touched. That's not the point, Owen shouted, slamming the table. We're supposed to be partners. Partners don't keep secrets. The irony was unbearable. This man hadn't noticed my absences, my freelance projects, our anniversaries. But I stayed silent. The following months became war. Owen mocked the cabin, calling it my crisis shack. His family told everyone it proved I was unstable. Poor Owen, stuck with a wife who bought property behind his back. But every Friday, I drove north. I learned to mend boards, grow tomatoes, identify bird calls. I wrote journals of things I couldn't say, how I dreaded Sunday dinners, how I sat in the car 10 minutes before entering my own house, how I marked days just to prove survival. Margaret escalated with a family meeting disguised as an intervention. She made a PowerPoint. Septic failures, roof replacements, property tax projections. Mason joked I was growing weed in the woods. Richard implied I was meeting someone there. Owen stayed silent. When they paused, I showed them photos, my garden, my desk by the window, my crooked bookshelves. They looked for 3 seconds before Margaret shut my phone. Well, I suppose everyone needs their hobbies, she said, dripping condescension. 2 months later, everything shifted. James Harrison, my managing director, called me in. We've won the Ray Che contract, $12 million, for months across Asia. I need you. The project required high-level clearance. My name top th. E-list. Your experience is unmatched. The client requested you, James said. I accepted, without hesitation. 4 months away felt like oxygen after suffocation. When I told Owen, his fork froze midair. Why you? Why not Harrison or Kumar? Because I had the clearance and expertise. A woman alone in Asia seems unnecessary. Can't you do it remotely? Within the hour, Margaret was on the phone. Violet, don't you think it's selfish? Marriage requires sacrifice. You're only interested in your career. The security briefing, Agent Yamamoto explained. Your cabin will be flagged as a cleared contractor's asset. This provides protection against interference. The irony wasn't lost on me. The worthless shack was now a federally monitored asset. I prepared everything. Property management, automated payments, security cameras, a 15-page emergency folder marked emergency access only. Owen laughed, tossing it aside. It's just a shack, not Fort Knox. Singapore hit me with humidity and freedom. From my balcony over Marina Bay, I finally exhaled. 4 months without dismissal stretched like a promise. The work was exhausting but exhilarating. I uncovered compliance issues, saving millions. James praised my reports. The client requested an extension. I declined. 4 months was my limit. My weekly calls with Owen became studies in disinterest. At first, 10 minutes of distracted small talk. By week 3, he was dining at Margaret's during our scheduled calls. The family chatter drowned out any attempt at meaningful conversation. Your absence is barely noticed, Margaret once said loud enough for Owen's phone to pick up, followed by Mason's laughter. Margaret's emails arrived like clockwork every Sunday evening. Articles about career women who lost families or wives who abandoned duties for ambition. Each ended with, "Concerned for your marriage, Margaret," as if concern had ever been our motive. One morning, the family group chat I'd been part of for 6 years displayed an error. You are no longer a participant. No explanation. Owen called it a glitch, but his social media showed another story. Photos of dinners where he sat between Margaret and Richard, Mason's girlfriend Sarah, in my seat. Captions read like obituaries for me. Great evening with the whole family. Complete at last. My cabin security cameras became my lifeline. Each morning, coffee in hand, I watched deer wander or rain ripple the pond. Management reports always read, all systems normal, but gave me more comfort than Owen's sporadic texts. By month 3, he stopped answering calls. Texts came hours later, busy. Fine. His social media, however, showed him at dinners, concerts, drinks with Mason. Sarah appeared in more photos, laughing at Owen's jokes, her manicured hand resting on his shoulder. The last photo showed her smile too bright, too close. Timestamp. Last Tuesday, the night Owen claimed to be working late. I closed the laptop and stared at Singapore's skyline, the city's pulse vibrating through glass as I processed the truth. This wasn't indifference anymore. It was something else entirely. 16 hours and 3 time zones later, I landed in Detroit. I'd texted Owen twice about my arrival. No reply. At baggage claim, I waited 40 minutes. Families embraced. Drivers held signs. No Owen. Then a text. Mom's preparing a special dinner for your return. Come straight here. After 4 months, my husband couldn't bother with the airport. The Whitmores were orchestrating something. The taxi route passed our neighborhood. I asked the driver to slow. Through the window, I saw a leather sectional where our blue sofa had been. New artwork. 2 unfamiliar cars in the drive. This your house? He asked. I'm not sure anymore, I admitted. My keys still worked, but the house wasn't mine. Expensive furniture. Your abstract art Margaret would approve of. My spices replaced by empty canisters. Owen's clothes filled my side of the closet. On the dresser. Perfume I didn't own. I drove to the Whitmore house. Their driveway looked like a dealership. Lexus, Mercedes, Range Rover, BMW, plus 2 more. Inside, laughter and celebration. Margaret's voice rose. He handled it brilliantly. The dining room was staged like a magazine spread. Margaret's crystals sparkled under the chandelier, wine decanters breathing. Everyone dressed for an occasion. Owen stood at the head of the table, wearing triumph. Violet, Margaret said with false warmth. Perfect timing. We were just about to toast. Owen raised his glass. Actually, before we eat, I have something important. You all know Violet's little cabin, that impractical purchase. Well, I finally did something. I sold it for $60,000 while she was overseas. Applause erupted. Richard's golf clap, Margaret's gasp, Mason's whistle. Sarah clapped too, eyes on Owen. He pointed at the catered spread. This dinner is from the cabin sale. At least one meal covered. Laughter. My sanctuary stolen. Money spent for their entertainment. He pulled out a leather folder of documents. Handled everything myself. Research. Bids, no agent fees. Richard leaned forward. Brilliant. How about the signature? Mason asked. Owen grinned. 3 days of practice. Got it perfect. He showed forged signatures, my name, but off. Margaret beamed. Resourcefulness. My phone buzzed. Harrison Blackwell, attorney at law. Panic in his voice. Federal authorities are here. They've seized files, asking about fraudulent transfers. What property did your husband sell us? The Pine Grove cabin, he explained. Your husband handled it all. 6 weeks ago, $60,000 wired. Now they're saying fraud and forgery. While I was in Singapore documenting compliance, Owen forged federal docum. Ants. My phone buzzed again. Special Agent Reeves. Maintain normal behavior. Attend dinner. Team mobilizing. Through the window, Owen held court, gesturing like a genius. His family glowed with pride. They had no idea their golden boy had confessed to federal crimes. Did I rejoin them? Just work? I said when Owen asked about my call. He smirked. Always working. Learn to relax, Violet. He boasted how he'd found documents in my office safe, unchanged from our anniversary code. Richard praised him. Mason spoke of investment plans. They divided my money like pirates, Sarah chimed in sweetly. You must be so proud, Violet. Owen took charge while you were gone. I met her gaze. Oh, yes. He took charge of something that wasn't his. Owen laughed. Everything in a marriage is ours, darling. My phone buzzed. 15 minutes. Margaret served tiramisu, her victory dessert. Then black vehicles pulled into the drive, headlights sweeping across curtains. 6 agents emerged with military precision. I rose. I'll get the door. Owen, still talking, barely noticed. At the door stood Agent Catherine Reeves, flanked by 5 agents in dark suits. Her eyes met mine with recognition. Mrs. Whitmore, she said quietly. Are all the subjects present? They're in the dining room, I confirmed, stepping aside. All of them? They're having dessert. The agents moved through Margaret's hallway with practiced precision, footsteps deliberate on polished hardwood. Each sounded like a countdown until Owen's world collapsed. Agent Reeves led, hand near her badge, ready to turn celebration into catastrophe. The dining room fell silent as 6 federal agents filed in, blocking exits with movements so smooth they seemed choreographed. Owen's fork froze halfway, tiramisu sliding onto Margaret's heirloom tablecloth. Richard's face strained. Mason pressed back in his chair. Sarah's eyes darted toward the door, calculating impossible escape. Owen Whitmore, Agent Reeves announced, badge glinting under the chandelier. You're under arrest for wire fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit interstate commerce violations. The words landed like blows. Owen's wine glass shattered across Margaret's Persian rug, Merlot spreading like blood. This is insane, he shouted, springing to his feet. It was just a property deal. Selling federally registered property with forged documents isn't a simple transaction, Reeves replied evenly. It's a federal crime. Handcuffs clicked with finality, Margaret screaming. There's been a mistake, she cried, clutching pearls. A misunderstanding. Owen was just being resourceful. We need our lawyer. Richard rose, voice trembling. You can't just... Sir, please sit down, an agent ordered. Richard sank back, suddenly every bit of his 72 years. Agents documented everything. One photographed the forged papers spread across the table. Owen's confession turned evidence. Another captured champagne bottles, the lavish dinner funded with stolen money. Phones were collected despite Sarah's protests and Mason's denials. Owen turned to me, his face shifting, confusion, anger, desperation, before landing on betrayal. Violet, tell them. Explain. I had every right. Tell them. I met his gaze with a silence I'd perfected over 6 years. Silence that had been my prison now became my power. Wives can't testify against husbands, he pleaded. You can't do this to me. I was helping our finances. Reeves secured his wrists. Actually, spouses can testify in federal cases involving crimes against each other. But we don't need your wife. You've given us everything tonight. Confession, forged documents, fraudulent sale. More than sufficient. She looked at me briefly, professional, but perhaps with understanding. Mrs. Whitmore, you'll need to provide a statement tomorrow. Our financial crimes unit uncovered irregularities beyond the cabin. Margaret gasped. Additional irregularities. Reeves turned to Owen's parents. Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, you'll also come in. Your names appear on suspicious transfers. The cabin was just the beginning. Embezzlement, hidden investments, a pattern of fraud. The family that celebrated Owen's mediocrity while dismissing me now sat frozen, watching their golden child led away in handcuffs. Their dynasty crumbled in real time. Mason turned pale as rights were read. Sarah collapsed, mascara streaking, insisting she barely knew them, though photos showed her at family gatherings for months. Margaret begged to accompany Owen. Richard muttered about their lawyer, disbarred 2 years AG. Oh, BY morning, I sat in my kitchen now, drinking coffee from the mug I'd bought in Singapore. My phone buzzed nonstop. Journalists, strangers, Margaret. Within 48 hours, Premier Title Services was shut down, their license suspended. Owner Bradley Morrison claimed innocence, but forged documents proved negligence. His career ended in a morning. 3 agents who'd advised Owen lost licenses for ignoring red flags. Margaret's Facebook posts damned her. My brilliant son made the deal of the year. Screenshotted and shared with investigators. The same neighbors she flaunted to now cross the street to avoid her. The buyers, David and Jennifer Chin, sued everyone. Blackwell's law firm, title company, agents, Owen. Even me at first, until their lawyer realized I was the victim. Blackwell's firm imploded, his name scraped off the building. Months later, investigators revealed Owen's theft spanned years. He siphoned joint funds for Mason's fake dropshipping, Richard's gambling, Sarah's lunches and trips. Every theft revealed entitlement disguised as family finances, AT sentencing. Owen stood thinner, arrogance stripped. I meant no harm, he claimed. Marriage is shared property. I had every right. Judge Thornton stared over her glasses. You've confessed to planning and forgery. That doesn't minimize your crime. It confirms it. She sentenced him to 4 years, no early release, plus $285,000 restitution. The man who cut corners to avoid $1,000 in fees now owed more than he'd earn in a decade. Margaret and Richard faced charges too, over $50,000 in stolen funds spent on cruises and clubs. Mason flipped instantly, testifying about family schemes, admitting, we all knew Violet's money was being taken. We just called it family finances. Weeks later, I returned to my cabin. Now upgraded with restitution funds, graveled road, new security, renovated kitchen, triple pane windows, extended deck. My sanctuary reborn. Agent Reeves visited with coffee. Your case exposed bigger crimes, she explained. Owen targeted other women through the bank. The cabin's federal protection tripped everything. The FBI recovered $500,000, much already gone to Whitmore indulgences. Divorce proceedings were swift. Judge Foster awarded me all assets, even Margaret's cherished Waterford crystal. Their legacy sat boxed in my basement, destined for charity. Owen's letters arrived, First angry, then self-pitying, then resigned. He never apologized. Eventually, they stopped. The scandal dominated headlines. Neighbors who once ignored me now brought casseroles and offered help. My consulting flourished, demand surging. From the cabin's second bedroom, I earned more in 6 months than Owen stole in 6 years. On the first anniversary of that dinner, I sat on my deck with wine chosen simply because I liked the label. Silence surrounded me. Pine needles whispering, water lapping, an owl calling. No Whitmore texts, no Margaret messages, no Owen. Just peace. The absence of their voices revealed how much space they'd taken.